Alright boys, we're here for some more tier listing. And now, I like making these a little bit because they're quick and they're easy and they're not constantly bombing the subscription feed. And they give me something to do really quick for some drip feed in between the longer scripted videos, which again are taking a little longer because school is starting and like kind of OD fuck school, like sort of, especially in the age of coronavirus. And what's really funny, and the reason why I bring this up is because, see, when we're in these early teacher accountability meetings where like you're at school and they're wanting to watch you and they want to make sure you're doing the work, I'm not doing the work. I'm sitting there playing Binding Blade. Like, what else do you think I'm going to be doing right then? But also, the debate that is really hopping right now in education is bases versus growths, which I find very interesting. In general, in education, we prefer growths because that's sort of what we are there to do. Teachers are sort of the growth rates. We are the Jagans trying to pass down the stats to the growth units that we're teaching. It's very complicated and it's very powerful. Like, you should try it out sometime. But so, you know, we're talking about bases and growths all day at work, so I'm like, fuck this, I want to come home and talk about bases and growths for the Sacred Stones. This is my second favorite Fire Emblem game. Absolutely love it. It was the first one I played. If you're curious about what my favorite Fire Emblem game is, it is Shadows of Valentia. Don't ask me why. It's a bad game, but it's the best also. Don't at me. Love this game. Always recommend it to people as like a beginner game or a good introduction, especially if you've played like newer Fire Emblem and you want to get into older Fire Emblem. I think this is a very good starting place. For a lot of reasons, it is very... It's pretty easy. I'm not going to say it's like the easiest game ever, and certainly as a beginner playing it on normal mode way back in the day, it brutalized me. But it isn't extreme. It isn't like Binding Blade or something. Which is funny that I say you should recommend this game as like an introduction to Fire Emblem to people, because the other night when I'm like stoned off my ass, dude's like, "Hey man, you play Fire Emblem, right?" And I'm like, yeah, bro. And he's like, "I've played 3 Houses, man, and it's like, it's so good. I love the Monastery, but I want to play some older games. What's a good one to start with?" And I was like, "Brother, Thracia 776. In my right mind, I don't think I'd ever recommend that. I'd probably go Sacred Stones. And it is the game that I am probably most quote-unquote knowledgeable about. I'll probably still get absolutely roasted in the comment section for this list, as I probably deserve. But I love it, and I've played it 3 times recently, completed it 3 times, once in a sort of low-tier playthrough that was, you can find unlisted on the channel, most of that playthrough. A 0% growth run I just did, which was a lot of fun. That was Eirika route. I'd never done a 0% growth run before, and so completing it felt really good. And then a Gilliam solo, which you probably will see one of these days pretty soon. A Gilliam solo, because I want to do something with that. Because Gilliam is a... I never thought much of him. He was a pretty anonymous unit, and then, like, the Iron Colon picked up on him, and ever since then, it's been meme city with Gilliam. Like, this dude is like, somehow he has the most anime hair in this cast, even though like it's one of the few that's like a natural color. But anyway, let's go ahead and get into this. The rules of the tier list are pretty typical. I'm assuming that you're playing the game not necessarily super fast, but in the easiest way. The tier list would reflect generally what I would tell people you should do if you want to make the game easier. You know, some people, maybe they find using units like you and fun, but this isn't about fun, this is about winning. And then the other thing is that since there's a route split in Sacred Stones, that affects how good some units are. Most people tend to average them together, like, say, Duessel, for example. They'll say, okay, how does Duessel Ephraim route? How is Duessel and Eirika route? And we'll kind of average that out. I don't really want to do that. I'm just going to compare them. I'm just going to put them in the spot that is for their better route. Because mostly that stems from me being a Duessel fanboy, so I just want to, like, put them really high. I don't want to have to lower him for Eirika route. So yeah, that's generally the rules. You're playing pretty quick, no grinding, hard mode, of course, or difficult mode, I should say. And you're playing the game in the path of least resistance. So we're going to go in recruitment order, of course. So we are going to open up with Eirika. Eirika is interesting. She's actually not. She's very boring, and she's a frustrating character. I don't, like... Leon asks for the balls, and she gives them. But the thing about Eirika is that she is sword-locked and foot-locked for the vast majority of the game. In the latter third or so of the game, last fourth of the game, after she promotes, she has access to a horse and to a very good personal weapon, the Siglinde, which is very powerful. But Eirika, suffers from typical Lord problems, the same problems that Ellie Wood and Lynn and Roy suffer from, which is that, can't promote until really late. And she's footlocked in a game that is mount dominated. If you don't have a mount, you need to do something that really makes you stand out. You need to have extremely good combat, or you need to have really good staff utility. And she doesn't really have anything like that. She's very, very weak. Obviously 0% growth, she's worthless. But even in a gross playthrough, like, if you're playing a little bit fast, she just sort of can't keep up. Like, you can feed her kills pretty easily in the early maps with all the axe bros, but once they start putting up the axes for lances, and when the maps start to get a little bit bigger, it's hard to, like, have her keep up, and her strength just does not keep pace with, like, the increasing enemy health. And then, of course, the other problem is being sword locked in Sacred Stones is just bad. This is probably the second most enemy face heavy game in the series, probably only beaten out by Path of Radiance. So you really want javelins or hand axes or 1-2 range. Your swords just don't really get it done. For now, we're going D tier. I don't know if that's completely fair, but it's what we're going to put her as, for now at least. And then Seth, I don't think this one needs really any explanation. If you're watching a Sacred Stones tier list video, if you've played Fire Emblem for 3 minutes, you know Seth is probably a top 5 unit in the entire series. I don't think there's any doubt that he's the best unit in Sacred Stones. You could really put him in a tier by himself if you really want to, like, do, like, tier gaps or a real separation of utility. Then he's the only S tier unit in this game. Now, I like symmetry, so I'm going to allow other units into the S tier, but really he is a god among scrubs. It was really, like, unfortunate to put him in the beta tier before we moved him out, but this guy is a beast. He does fall off, sort of. In 0% growth, he stays really good until about 2/3 of the way through the game. Then it's like the Garrick and Duessel show, and you just, like, Seth is, like, good for some chip and for some rescue dropping. But in a gross playthrough, he has very competitive growths, so he never really gets outclassed by anybody. It takes forever for any units to even catch up to him. So for probably about 3/4 of the game, if you're fielding him and using him for, like, giving him some boss kills or giving him some experience here or there, he's just not going to get outclassed. And that's just merely long-term prospects. Obviously, like, he solos the first half of the game on accident. Like, you don't even have to try. For a lot of people, that I've talked to, they just don't like even playing with Seth because he completely trivializes the first half of the game in a way that is just ludicrous. What he does to early game Sacred Stones is honestly pretty unique and probably something that no other unit in the series does. Because even other great units like Sigurd, you still are going to need Alec and Noish to run off and get villages, probably, if you want to complete all the side objectives. Or other, like, Milady doesn't show up till halfway through. But Seth he gets all the side objectives done. He kills everything. He moves further than anybody else. He hits harder than anybody else. He has A swords and A lances, so he can use any sword or lance that you want him to. And that's just God. That's God tier. That's actually really sick and disgusting, and it should be illegal, and you shouldn't be allowed to make units this good. I think Sacred Stones has a reputation as being really easy for like a lot of reasons, but Seth is certainly chief among them, because this game does not start to feel anything like resembling a challenge until Seth begins to fall off a little bit. And by fall off, I mean just be the best unit on your team, but not by as wide a margin. The dude is a god. He's unreal at the beginning, and he's merely excellent at the end. Just such a beast. Just what a god. And like, have him carry around Eirika with an Eirika support, which is pretty easy to get. Like, I got mine accidentally, actually. First time I played the game, and then most recently playing 0% growths, I accidentally got it. You know, I was playing like, I didn't have a strat, but, you know, just so much that he can do. What a god. And then you have Franz, who I'm gonna put S tier, because again, I like symmetry. He is definitely a tier below Seth, but like, I don't want to add an extra tier because like this is nicely spaced. But Franz has a lot of really good things going for him. Obviously, like sick ass availability. You know, right from chapter 1, he is there on turn 2, and he never goes away. The biggest problem I find with Franz is that technically he is a growth unit, so he can get RNG screwed, which I have seen before. I've also seen extremely blessed Franzes. I had one recently that was level 10 with 8 resistance. Like, I don't even know what that even is. Is that, like, allowed? But Franz, even if he gets a little RNG screwed, he has a lot going for him. His class is obviously really good. This is a mount-heavy game. He can throw javelins at base. He can move anywhere you want. He has swords during the early Axe Fighter chapters. Now, I find he has issues doubling early on, so it's hard to, like, you know, get him a lot of kills early. But the fact that he has 7 movement and has weapon triangle control means that there really isn't too much of an issue getting him the experience that he needs, because he can move into combat, he can get that plus 15 hit and avoid, that plus 1 damage from controlling the weapon triangle. He really, like, is just terrific. Now, 0% growths, he's pretty bad once you get past, like, chapter, like, 4 or 5, because the enemies just start to really outpace him. But, again, like, when it comes to quote-unquote growth units, one of the best in the series. It does suck that he can't use steel lances or steel swords at base, which Eirika actually can't either. That's another thing that hurts Eirika, as her damage output is poor because she can't use steel swords. Franz can't either, which sort of hurts early on because you'd like to give him the Seth steel sword, because Seth doesn't need the steel sword. You can give Seth a slim sword and he still kills everything. So that kind of hurts. You wish you could do a little more damage early on, but really great unit. And he's also the best candidate for the Knight's Crest you get at the end of Chapter 7. Like, just really frighteningly powerful unit if you train him up, and he has all the time in the world to do it, really. Okay, and then we got Gilliam here. I don't even know, man. Like, this one's kind of tough, because, like, obviously, in my heart, I want to put Gilliam here, because he's a meme, and he's a waifu, and he's great. But he's just not that good. Obviously, he has the Armor Knight woes of 4 move in GBA Fire Emblem, which is bad. But he does have one benefit, though, which is that if you promote him, and I don't know why you would, it takes away your Knight Crest. And Sacred Stones, if you go like Eirika route, has a real big Knight Crest problem, because your only early game one is from Chapter 7, and you'll have 4 units fighting over it. But if you give it to Gilliam, he can go Great Knight, which is definitely better than General. You get all 3 weapon types like General, but you also get 2 additional points of movement. You get Canto and a mount, better rescue drop utility. But it's really tough, unless you're soloing the game with Gilliam, which I have done before for some reason. Unless you're doing that, it's very tough to get him the kills that he needs, because he's just so slow and he's so heavy, and he uses lances, so he's like or he uses exclusively lances, so he gets like hurt by, a lot of the axe enemies early on in the game. Like, doesn't really get good accuracy against them, so he really struggles early on. Even if you get him promoted, we're talking E swords and E axes, which is just not good, because if you wanted to fix his problems, you'd want him to get Garm, and that's just going to be really hard to do, to get him to S axes in a timely manner. Again, unless you're soloing the game with him, in which case he gets there in no time, but we're not tiering this in the context of a Gilliam solo. So he just really, really, really struggles. His speed is a big problem. One of the few units in this game that you cannot get to reliably double, because the speed growth just isn't there, and even with like speed wings, he's just not going to hit those benchmarks that he needs to double most things. Generally, you want about, if you can get 17 speed in Sacred Stones, that's when you're doubling like basically everything by the end game. And Gilliam is going to get like 12 or 13 off of his own growths and promotion bonuses by the end of the game, which is not going to get it done. It's bad. But also like S tier in my heart, D tier in my brain. Okay, then we got Vanessa here, and we're going S tier. I'm talking here, look at the symmetry, low tier, high tier, it's all happening. I think it's a legit question as to like who is better here. I'm going Vanessa though over Franz, because Vanessa, for a lot of new players, and this is definitely the case for me when I first played, really, really, really fucking horrible combat, like just complete ass. And the issue is that like, she is facing weapon triangle disadvantage, but unlike Gilliam, she has big durability problems. She has low defense, she has low health, not a good combo, and then it's like taking additional damage from being at weapon triangle disadvantage. Slim Lance is really weak that she comes with. The Javelin is really inaccurate, and it weighs her down and gets her doubled by most things. So there is like this moment of really, really bad combat on her part. However, what makes her better than Franz is that even though these both, as far as combat goes, are technically quote-unquote growth units, Vanessa, even if she gets RNG screwed, is going to have the most flyer utility in your game. She can rescue drop anybody. Not everybody. Like, she can't get, like, fucking Dozler or something, but you know what I mean. Pick up anybody, drop them down, go get side objectives, go grab villages, carry people over mountains, dump Gilliam off, over that mountain in chapter 7 so that he can get all the kills. Whatever you need done, the utility is there, and then the really good combat ends up coming along with that. I find it's very hard to train the Pegasus Knights without grinding until you get to about chapter 9, when like enemies just start really weighing themselves down, and you start getting like a lot of like just a massive volume of shitty enemies that they can sort of like plunder, and there's no like axe bros anymore. So I find that combat-wise, she's sort of equal to Tana much later in the game, and like kind of gets going at about the same time, but her massive availability advantage and the fact that there's a lot of chapters early on in Sacred Stones where you do want somebody dumping shit off across mountains and stuff makes her very nice. Even in her joining chapter, she's the best unit to go grab the pure water. She can grab Ross immediately to save him, which is definitely, I think, the intended way to do it. In easy mode, they probably have a tutorial for it. That's at least what it feels like. I'm not sure. I've never played easy mode, so if somebody knows easy mode, give me the info. But really, really good. And then she can promote Wyvern Lord, or Wyvern Knight, I should say. Very, very good. Gives her a big constitution boost. She's not going to get weighed down nearly as much by those heavier lances and javelins. She's going to destroy everything. And then late game flying in Sacred Stones is really good, because some of the final maps in the game are super terrain heavy, and so you want to be able to move unimpeded through that, and she can with like 8 movement as a wyvern, like destroys everything. It's sick. Also like waifu, like Gilliam, waifu. So like brain S tier, heart S tier, and then also heart S tier is Moulder, but we're putting him in A tier. Moulder is staff user, earliest staff user that you get. Comes with D staffs, comes at like level 3, I think. 3 or 4. I think it's 3. Very nice. There isn't a whole lot you can really say. Except for that his outstanding availability means that by the time you start needing more advanced staffs like Restore and Warp, he's going to be there, and he's going to have the rank to do it. He might start at C rank, actually. I don't remember, but he's at C rank by the time you need the C shit, so no problem there. Surprisingly durable. At base level, before I had promoted him in 0% growth, he was able to survive hits from enemies like as late as chapter 13, which is stupid. And that shouldn't be legal. There's a reason why this dude is the boulder. And that mustache is just glorious. So glorious. Now, staff utility isn't that great in Sacred Stones, but you can warp skip some of the indoor maps, which is really nice. And of course, Physic is epic. So, you know, pretty good unit. Then you got Garcia here. I used to not like Garcia. I think a lot of new players don't like Garcia because he doesn't seem that impressive. But very strong, holds up for a long time on his bases alone. Can throw hand axes around. And even though he doesn't have a mount, he doesn't have a mount to really help him in combat, but he is strong enough early on where there's always going to be a spot for him for a long time, and he's going to get things done. Soldiers are so slow, generic enemy soldiers are so slow, that they get doubled by basically everybody, and Garcia is obviously no exception, but the fact that he uses axes, you're only early axe user that's like self-sustainable, which means he's the best way to deal with a lot of those, because Seth is going to be running off, trying to do his own thing with Eirika, and so like when you need like swaths of enemies taken out kind of earlier in the map, Garcia's a good guy to do it. Chapter 4, he kills a lot of monsters. Chapter 7, he's really good at like choking that point at the bridge where all those enemies are coming in while Vanessa, ferries everyone else, like Seth and Eirika to the throne. So very, very good. I think a lot of people used to not like him because of Ross, his son, who we're going to tier next. But he does hold up. He doesn't really hold up the entire game, but he comes pretty close to it. I've used him hard mode through end game, and he ends up being serviceable, but that's pretty much everybody. His points come on from being really your second best combat unit when you get him, and he holds that title for a while, really until he gets eclipsed by Franz. And then you got Ross. Ross people love, and I get it. I like using Ross. I think using Ross is fun. But he's not that good. He starts as a trainee unit, so he is a tier below everyone else early on, with terrible, terrible stats. He can double literally nothing at the beginning of the game. He has base 3 speed to go along with 3 resistance. It's just, it's buns. It doesn't work. And obviously he has 9 free levels, quote unquote, that you have to get, and his growths are not that great though, unfortunately, and his first promotion gains aren't that great, and he's locked to 4 range before he promotes. Just a lot of problems. Cannot use any axe other than his base hatchet, which is a really weak weapon. The best thing that he brings is the hatchet is a pretty reliable 1-2 range option, and is your most reliable 1-2 range option when you get Ross. Because it doesn't suffer weapon triangle to all the axe bros, so that's pretty nice. And he can promote to pirate and water walk, and if you can do that by chapter 7, that's pretty good, and he's going to help you clear that chapter a little bit faster. And then also his water walking late in Ephraim route can be really good as well, but you don't need that, and it doesn't really make the game easier. You can complete it a little quicker, but I find it's just a hassle usually to get Ross leveled up. You just want to kill everything with Seth and feed kills to Franz and Vanessa when you can. So really struggles. Garcia is at least very self-sustainable, and that's an advantage that he has that I think is definitely worth 2 tiers. And then Neimi's probably the worst unit in the game. Well, no, I don't know why I'm saying that. She's definitely not the worst unit in the game, but she's the worst you have for a hot minute, and she never really gets anywhere. Neimi has trouble, let's just say. First of all, being an archer in Game Boy Fire Emblem, or specifically in Sacred Stones, is bad because the game is so enemy phase focused. The fact that she can only, provide chip on player phase just doesn't work. It doesn't, it gives her very slow experience gain. She basically levels up at the rate of a healer, more or less. Like, she levels up like Moulder, except it's just a lot less useful. And you don't really need her chip very often. E-Bows is really bad, and I think she has E-Bows. I don't know. I don't look at her stat screen ever because I don't look at her ever because I just go straight to the bench. Although I did use her recently. She does promote into Ranger, which is pretty nice. You get her swords, get her a mount. That's worth something, but it's very difficult to get her to level 10 to get her to promote. And if you promote her at level 10, her strength is going to be really, really, really bad. She's still not going to do much as a Ranger. So really just poor unit. Doesn't do a whole lot. I think for most people, the most they get out of her, unless they just really like training her or using bad units, is she chunks that wall in Chapter 3. And that's pretty good. Like, chunking that wall is more than what the units below her are going to be doing. So, like, you know. Fucking Neimi. Bad. And you got Colm here, who's like... They say they're childhood friends, but, like, he looks way older, so I'm, like, convinced he's some kind of sex criminal. But Colm is a thief, and he can steal some shit, and he can pick some locks. That's what he does. D tier. And the reason he's D tier specifically is because he doesn't do combat. He's a thief. That's not really what he's there for. But there's not a whole lot of stealables in Sacred Stones that you're really hurting for. There's a couple of like red gems that are nice to get. There's the energy ring in Chapter 7 that you really want. There's a speed wing late in the game, like on the Selena chapter, the route chapter in Ephraim route that you want to get. But other than that, there's just not a whole lot he can do. And then like his door and chest utility just doesn't work out for him because chest keys are buyable. You have the unlock staff, all doors drop door keys nearby. So just his utility is not as niche as he needs it to be. He gets outclassed by items, which is kind of a problem, especially because unlike someone like Astor from Binding Blade, he can't even fight. So just very poor unit. He'd be better if you could steal like staves and stuff, like you steal a physics staff, but you can't do that in this game, which is unfortunate. Then we got Artur, who's going straight into A tier. I think a lot of people prefer using Lute, the unit that we got here next, to Artur. And I see the reasons why, but also like they're invalid and wrong, and Artur is really good. He starts at like the sweet spot of Constitution and Speed where he can double a lot of things, which is really good. Means he gets, more kills, gets more experience. But the real good thing about Artur is that not only is he just reliable 1-2 range that targets resistance and can double, very nicely for a while, he promotes to Bishop and gets Slayer. Now this also applies to Moulder, but it's like really, really good on Artur because Artur is going to be able to use your high-level light tomes, which is like basically just shine. But he can use that, deal triple effective damage against monsters, particularly if you go, no matter which route you go, there's a lot of monsters towards the end of the route splits. And then you've got like the Gorgon Egg chapter and like Chapter 20 where mad-ass monsters and just being able to one-shot them is super nice. Even on 0% growths, he is useful late into the game because he's dealing triple effective damage against monsters. When he promotes to Bishop, he gets C staves, which is really, really good. Lets him use Restore at base. You can get that up to B staves very, very easily. Get him using Physic. So just very versatile. Good combat unit. Good staff bot. Gets Slayer. Is a god. Who's much less of a god is Lute. Lute struggles because she cannot really double very much early on. You can double some soldiers, of course, but everybody can do that except Ross. And she has a good promotion option in Mage Knight, which gives her a mount, but she doesn't really have promotion options that give her like high-level staves, which is what she would really want. And so, she sort of struggles. She's not terrible, but she's just slightly too slow to be that good of a combat unit on player phase. And just never really... She gets somewhere, but nowhere that like nobody else gets to quicker or better, But it's actually Lute is one of my favorite kind of lines on the internet, which when I was first playing the game and I was looking up advice, somebody was saying to not use Seth, bench him, he's bad, because he steals experience, because he's a Jagan. Jagans are experienced thieves. And they were like, Lute is simply superior to Seth by a long shot. And I'd forgotten about that until I found the that thread recently. And that's just my favorite shit ever. So, actually, we're putting her in S tier, simply superior tier, because better than Seth by a long shot. Okay, Natasha, C tier. And think about Natasha is that, she uses staves at base, which is good, but she starts level 1 with GBA staff experience, which is bad. It's just straight ass cheeks. If it looks like shit and smells like shit, it's probably GBA staff level up experience, because she's getting nowhere in a hurry. And she comes with D staves. She's not as good as Moulder, so lower staff rank, lower level, lower durability, so there's less margin for error with her. Just not good. Now she rides into C tier because she is early enough to where you can get her up to C staves, let her use restore, which is very nice. And also, though, unlike, she does, when she promotes, you can get her Slayer. It's pretty good. She has a very good magic growth, but a pathetic base. And when I played the game low tier, I actually was completely magic screwed on her. I don't think I got a single magic level up, unless you count her promotion gains, until pretty late in the game. So, the pathetic magic base just doesn't help her when she, when you want her to be warping or something. Because in FE8 you want every drop of magic for warping, since, it's literally just magic divided by 2. So really, 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 really bad, but also, throws some torch staves up in Chapter 5. Or Chapter 6, and if you want to use her, go right ahead. Hey, look, pretty good, I guess. Staff utility, early game, always good. You can bring her for Phantom Ship, you can bring her for whatever, have her throw some torch staffs, have her throw a restore every now and then, and that's going to be good. It's not going to fill a niche that you, really need filled, because other people are going to do it and do it better, and, you don't really need multiple warpers, you don't really... Well, sometimes you want multiple warpers, but there's other people that can do it better. And she just never really goes anywhere. Same with Joshua. I actually think Joshua's a little worse, because I think the potential to be a second warper is better than anything Joshua brings. Now, depending on the context of how you're playing Joshua, it can be really good or really, just kind of whatever. He can just be, fodder for the bench, or, your last deployment slot. A lot of people like him because he wears a hat, and hats are cool. Even, fucking stupid hats like the one he wears. The thing about Joshua is that he's probably your second best combat unit when you get him, because he's got C swords. He can use the killing edge. Pretty much, probably only Seth can do that at that point, unless you really put favoritism into Eirika or Franz's sword rank. So that's really nice. Using the killing edge is really good. Lets him kill a lot of things. But killing one enemy on enemy, or one enemy on player face, isn't really all that great in a game like Sacred Stones, where you want to be countering all the archers and the mages that the game is throwing at you. If you're doing 0% growths, Josh was really nice to have, because, he kills things on player phase, and you like that in 0% growths, and nobody else can do that, except for Seth, when he joins. So he's actually a really good candidate for promotion. But his promotion, too, is also an issue, because unlike someone like Garrick, he doesn't get a second weapon type. When he goes Swordmaster, which he always goes Swordmaster over Assassin, because Assassinate's a shitty skill, and Swordmaster's plus 15 crit is nice. He doesn't get any significantly better. He gets extra point of movement. That's something, but it doesn't give him javelins, doesn't give him hand axes. And then there's also just a hero crest problem, especially if you go Eirika route. If you go Eirika route, you don't get a hero crest until, Garrick. And you're giving that to Garrick. You're not giving that to anybody else, and if you do give it to anybody else, you're probably going to give it to Garcia, if we're going to tier these on who's going to make better use, because Garcia is going to, hit you up with some hand axes still. You can get them bows if you want that. Garcia can start, like, clipping flyers. Like, there's just a lot better that you can do with that. And so Joshua just doesn't bring much to the table other than pretty good player face combat, but that's not something you really need in Sacred Stones. I always find that he's better in my mind than he is actually playing, unless it's 0% growths, because I'll always tell myself, I'm going to try Joshua out, and then he just gets left in the dust because footlocked, can't retaliate. But fine. Like, for new players, I would recommend you bring him along, actually, for the early game, because killing things on player phase is good for new players. I got Ephraim. Ephraim is really, really good. I don't know if we're putting him high B tier or low A tier. He's sort of like everything Eirika wishes she could be, because his personal weapon is basically the rapier, except it's a better weapon type. The Raijin Leaf is a lance that is also stronger than the rapier, doesn't face weapon triangle disadvantage nearly as often as the rapier does. He just also has higher strength, and so he has one of those niches that a footlocked unit needs to succeed in Sacred Stones, which is the ability to just, like, deck motherfuckers with combat. You put him near, like, a group of Cavaliers or Armor Knights, usually Cavaliers, those come in groups, he just dusts all of them. And that's really, 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 really fun. The Raijin Leaf is just a super powerful weapon, and he gets all the credit for it because he's the only character that can use it. Because he's a lord, you're going to need to, like, move him up quickly with your mounted units, which actually ends up helping him out quite a bit, because he is a guy you don't mind rescue dropping into some combat and have him, again, waste some fools, because he has lances, he can use javelins, he can retaliate some archers. So, like, you can like kill an armor knight, player face, trade him over a javelin, he's going to do just fine. He's got bulk. He does the things you want a character to do that's a combat unit, which is he deals a lot of damage. And that's really nice. That's really good. Maybe I'm overrating him a little bit. I think I might be. I think new players really like Ephraim for good reason. But if you're playing a little faster, he isn't as helpful. But he's such a breath of fresh air compared to Eirika. Like, Jesus fucking Christ. We got Orson, who is sort of like, I guess, the Gato of the game, except it's only for Chapter 5X. Very difficult to tier a character that's only around for one chapter, but he absolutely dusts everyone in that chapter and trivializes it pretty heartily. What I really like about Orson is that he can kill dudes. That's a thing you like. 8 movement, kills dudes. Chapter 5X is my least favorite chapter in the game because I don't like winding corridor maps in Fire Emblem that cannot be, like, circumvented in, like, fun ways, like whether it's warp or breakable walls or something. So, it doesn't really have side objectives other than the 2 chests at the beginning. It's just a straight line, and Orson gets it over with as quickly as possible. So I think, like, just making me end my misery fast gets him S tier. But when you look at that chapter, like, Ephraim is, like, killing the Cavaliers and stuff, but he's not moving very far, so you need to get him picked up. Kyle and Forde are struggling to one-round things. They're usually typically struggling to double. Their bulk ends up, like, put them into a lot of combat. They end up, like, kind of suffering a lot of damage. Same with Ephraim to a certain extent. But Orson just kills people, and he clears the way, and he gets it done. But again, it is just for one chapter. So, like, the one chapter that he's really, really good in is better than anything Neimi does, and it's honestly probably better than anything Gilliam does. Because Gilliam is like, he's bae, but he's also bad at everything, at moving and fighting. I mean, do we do this? Are we hot taken right now and saying Orson's better than Ross? I think we're hot taken right now and saying Orson's better than Ross. Because, again, one chapter availability, but you absolutely roll it over is way better than anything Ross does, which is mostly just annoy the shit out of you. Okay, Forde. Probably lower B tier. Around Garcia, maybe better. Forde is a meme in the community, and I think that's somewhat justified, and also somewhat not. Forde is like the worst Cavalier in the game, or worst base Cavalier. The worst is Amelia, but the worst base cavalier you get in the game. But, like, that's not a bad thing to have. Like, it sucks, but it also makes you better than everybody else because throws javelins and can move anywhere, rescue drop people. One of the few, in his unpromoted state, I think he's one of the only characters that can pick up Dozla. That is definitely an accomplishment. His combat parameters are bad. You know, he usually is struggling to double, or he is struggling to 2-hit KO. Even if he can double, he just never has enough strength or speed to do all the stuff you want him to do. And his bulk isn't that crazy, especially compared to Kyle. Kyle is significantly bulkier. So sometimes you don't get to move forward as far as you would like, but still Canto, rescue dropping, javelins, the ingredients are all there. So he might be a meme, but he's still honestly pretty good. I don't know if he's better than Garcia. Garcia's around for the early game. Forde doesn't come around permanently until Chapter 8. And he's pretty good Chapter 8. Because Chapter 8's another kind of boring chapter, and you want to get through it fast. You can pick some dudes up and carry them through. So it gets you through the boring chapters faster, so I'll put him above Garcia. Kyle, though, is better. I don't know if he's like A tier. I'd say he's A tier because he's very bulky. Kyle struggles to kill people early on, but he does a lot of damage, and he doesn't take a lot of damage, so he stays in the action longer, gets some more experience, allows him to snowball a little faster. Very, very good unit. Again, I don't want to repeat myself too much, you know, javelins, all that, high movement, yada yada, but the thing that makes Kyle pretty distinct, I think, compared to early game Franz and Forde, is that he is very bulky. And he's one of the bulkier units that you have. Probably bulkier than everybody that we've tiered so far, except for Seth, at the point that you get him, unless you've really pumped up Franz and early promoted him. So you get Kyle, does a lot of work. If you have him for Phantom Ship, you can really, like, kill everything, get a shitload of levels that way. Like, there's just a lot of things he can do to really snowball. He definitely has some speed issues, but speed issues in Sacred Stones aren't that big of a deal because eventually you're just going to double anyway. You're either hitting 17 speed or you're not, or you're just doubling reliably enough to where it doesn't matter. And so Kyle just has all the utility aspects of a Cavalier, plus good enough combat to where I think it's A tier. You feel safe using him pretty good. Also A tier is Tana, though she is above Kyle. I don't think she's above Artur or Moulder simply for availability reasons. But Tana is really good. Better on Eirika route because you get Chapter 9 to use her. You don't get Chapter 9 to use her in Ephraim route because she's like locked in a cell. The Geb cell, you know, like where's Geb on this tier list? Because we gotta tier Geb. Everybody wants to see Geb. But Tana has a very easy time training up, I find, because enemies are just super weak at that point in the game, and she's not facing a lot of axe bros, so she can and she has pretty good base stats, so she can pretty easily chunk some dudes, you know, do the good stuff, do the nasty to them. Not as good a waifu as Vanessa, though. Let's be honest here. Iron Colm put it in an interesting way, which is that the 80s hair just doesn't work, and I think he's right. I prefer the braid to the giant poofy hair. Not that it's terrible, but you know, I mean, But also, is definitely a waifu because Pegasus. And if you're a Pegasus Knight, if you're a flyer, she's not as big a waifu as Cormag, though, or Duessel. But, you know, still up there. I don't really know what else to say other than, flies around, kills everything. A lot of times in Sacred Stones, it's pretty redundant because you don't get a whole lot of, niche things with your mounted units. They're either gods like Seth, or they're not that great at combat, but they fly, or they move really far. Tana comes with a heavy spear, actually, and I think that makes some people think she's worse than she is because it does weigh her down really fiercely. But get her a javelin, get her an iron lance, and she's perfectly fine. And because the heavy spear is much better on somebody like Seth, who can really take advantage of it and just one shot, you know, armor knights and stuff. But really good. On Eirika route, she's really nice because Chapter 9, there's that big pool of water in Distant Blade that you can have her fly Seth over, or Franz over and dump them off and have them clear and save that village. Because you really want to save that village in Chapter 9 I think that's your hero crest, if I remember correctly. It's your first something or other. I'm pretty sure it's your hero crest if you save both the villages, and so you really need her to do that. You need her and Vanessa to like tag team and get Seth or someone over there to save it. Very good. Flower utility's very good in Sacred Stones. And then Amelia, bad. What helps Amelia is that you can grind her up pretty easily if you want to slow down. I was doing an LTC of Sacred Stones fairly recently, and then until I just stopped and was like, I'm going to grind up Amelia in Chapter 9 by smashing her against one of the priests and the archers, and got her to level 10 in Chapter 9. And she promoted and had base defense and was terrible still, even as a Cavalier. The only saving grace for Amelia is that if you do manage to somehow get her to level 10, she can go Cavalier and then Paladin. That's pretty good. But absolutely gross unit. Probably the hardest to use unit in the game, I would say, in an efficient setting, because she does not have reliable 1-2 range. She doesn't come early enough like Ross. Like, really struggles. The javelin, if you give her a javelin, it's going to weigh her down, going to get her doubled, going to get her killed. She's going to get doubled by most things anyway without that, but it's just even worse with the javelin. She probably just gets doubled by everything except armor knights, but those are probably going to one-shot her. And why would you put her there? She's going to do 0 damage. E lances is just ash cheeks. It's not going to get it done. She needs to deal damage. Just really bad. Really, really, really bad. But hey, look, Cavalier, that can't be that bad. But, you know, Neimi chunks a wall, so she's better than Amelia. And we got Duessel. This guy, this is the husbando right here. This is my guy. Even if I'm doing a low tier run, I just make an exception and I use Duessel because I use him every time because he's such a beast. Probably straight into right there on A tier. Obviously for Ephraim route, Eirika route, he's probably closer to like down here because he comes much later and isn't around for, you know, there's no phantom ship there for him to trivialize. Duessel has problems. His speed is a problem for late game because he's not going to double things. And his movement is a problem. As a Great Knight, he only has 6 movement, and he gets like chewed up really bad by terrain, which can be bad for late game. And he's pretty heavy, so it's hard to rescue drop him around. I don't know if anybody can really do it effectively, but he is Duessel. He has A rank in all of his weapons. Give him the silver sword, give him the silver axe, give him the silver lance. You know, he can use the brave weapons when you finally get those late games. Use all the killer weapons. Has complete weapon triangle control with the most powerful weapons in the game. Plus, he's the Crimson Chin. Look at him. Dude's fucking built. If I'm like 55 and look like that, that's how you know you made it. If you're that, like, it is insulting again that we had him in beta tier, because this man is not a beta male. He's an alpha male, not a beta male. So good. I think the best way to illustrate it is that Phantom Ship is often considered the hardest chapter in the game. I don't think that's anywhere close to true because of Duessel. If you find Phantom Ship hard, it's because you are not using Duessel. Duessel can like 1v1 that whole chapter. Like, it's 1v1 him versus everybody on the planet. He's gonna win. Like, there isn't really an issue there. Like, give him a hand axe, have him kill everything. It's fine. He still has experience though. He's bad. No, just use Duessel, bro. Just use Duessel and never die on... I never die on Phantom Ship. It's one of the easiest chapters in the game if you just use Duessel and you use Seth and you kill everything. Like, these motherfuckers are just probably bringing Amelia to Phantom Ship and then getting mad when they get roasted because she dies to anything. Like, fuck, no, bring Duessel. Like, kill everybody on the planet. It's great. You know who else is great? Cormag. This dude's also a husbando. Super good. Honestly, probably above Duessel, as much as that hurts, but... Wyvern bulk. Like, Cormag good. Comes with Elysian Whip. Level 9 on Ephraim route, level 11 on Eirika route. You pop it immediately, you got a Wyvern Knight. Fucking beast. +3 speed on promotion, out of control. And if you grow him up to like level 15, level 16 first, dude's gonna be a monster. Even more of a monster, I should say. Wyverns are always really good. Cormag is no exception. Because again, there's a lot of terrain in Sacred Stones. There's a lot of water you want to fly over. There's a lot of mountains and forests you want to fly over. And he does that. He does that no problem, and unlike Tana and Vanessa, who need like some investment and some work to get combat, he is combat competent right from the get-go, comes with sea lances, which isn't the best actually. I'd like him closer to A, but when he promotes, which you can do almost immediately, he gets nearly a full level of weapon experience. And he can use the killer lance at base, which everybody I think associates with him because he comes with it, and he can use it, you know? Just really, really, really good character. Does all the flyery things that you want, you know, rescue dropping, getting villages, hitting your side quests up, but he's also strong enough to where you can just fly him into groups of enemies that are kind of out of the way in route maps, or, you know, you can fly him ahead to have him take care of like a really powerful pre-promoted enemy that you need to get rid of before your scrubs come through, and he just does it all for you. Man is a beast. Larshell, bad. I don't know if she's worse. Yeah, she's worse than Gilliam. Gilliam at least has the early game. Problem with Larshell is that she's a troubadour, which is good, but D staves, like level 3, fuck that, that's bad. She's never going to promote. You're never going to get her to Valkyrie. Or Mage Knight. I don't know why you'd want Mage Knight, but like you're never going to get her to promote in an efficient setting where you're not just grinding and taking forever. And even if you do grind and take forever, she's still like getting really shitty healer experience, so like just bad. And the thing though that kills her, honestly, is like I wouldn't care about all that because mounted healer with rescue drop and trade strats, but in Kanto, but she has D staves. She cannot use restore at base, and that's a big problem because it tends to be the chapter you want to bring her for is the only one I ever bring her for is when you got to recruit Renak, and the issue there is that like that chapter, depending on which route you go on, it's much worse Ephraim route, but both Ephraim and Eirika route versions of that map have berserk staves, and then I think the Ephraim route has sleep staves, so you really, really want restore, and she just is not going to get it by, you know, in a timely enough fashion. Obviously, the fact that she can heal and she can Kanto and do all that makes her better than the F tier units, but just really, really awful, which is a shame because I love her character. I think she's hilarious. Her whole gang is hilarious. Duessel is hilarious. Renak is like just boring. I'm edgy, man. But, you know, I like Larshell's character is so good, but as a unit, just complete buns. Which is sad, because you would like a good troubadour. You really would, because you don't have really good mounted staff users in this game, so it'd be nice to have. Then we got Duessel. Somewhere top of C, bottom of B, maybe, I'm thinking. We'll put him bottom of B right now, because he does some work. He has that inbuilt Berserker critical, can walk on water in the Selena chapter, which is really clutch. C axes is okay, you'd like better, like Cormag, especially because Duessel comes a little bit later and he doesn't get like a big weapon rank boost on promotion because he's a pre-promote. But as a pre-promote, he's very strong, and again, like being able to walk across rivers is very nice. Using the killer axe is very nice, and his strength is just good. What keeps him from being like above though, like in being with somebody like, you know, he has the same movement as Duessel, but like worse weapon ranks and then just cannot double. You know, Duessel, the advantage of Duessel is that even though his speed is like troublesome, you can get him to Garm very, very easily and get him +5 speed. You can do that with Duessel too, but Duessel has to get to B axis, to A axis, and then to S axis. He's not going to get Garm until very, very late. And it helps, it fixes his problems, but he's just not going to have it, you know, and it's going to be very tough to get him some kills sometimes because unless he's one-shotting things, he's not doubling a whole lot, and that's a problem. But hand axes are pretty good. And walking on water is pretty good. So Duessel, he's alright. I'm thinking maybe C tier because he's better than Lute, but I do think he is a step below Garcia, who is one of your best combat units early on. And we got Ewan, better than Amelia because like he has reliable 1-2 range. He's very accurate from 2 range with his fire, but same issue. Extremely weak, does negative damage. Just completely trash. I remember old school way back in the day playing the game for the first time, the old tier list that used to be guides for this game. Ewan would be like top tier shit, and then Sele, who we'll look at later, was like bottom tier. And it's like, come on, man, E Anima Magic can only use the fire tome. I think he used the thunder tome, but it's like whatever. He really needs like L fire to fix that shitty damage, but he can't do it. 4 movement, can't go anywhere, dies to everything. Bad. Now he's better than Amelia though, because again, reliable 1-2 range, but also you can promote him to shaman and then make him a summoner. And so if you really want to pound your head into the brick wall of training Ewan, summoner is a pretty good class, and it's very unique, and it's something that he can do that not many other people can. That's pretty good. But you're never going to get him there because Ewan, he's bad, so you're going to have to grind to do it. If you find it fun, obviously it's fun. I think using Ewan can be kind of fun sometimes. I don't actually like the weak magical units very much for like training, because I don't know. Because I feel like they're reliable enough with Chip that like it's just not as fun, like him or Anino, as like somebody like, I don't know, Neimi, who's just so aggressively bad at combat. Again, Neimi chips a wall, that's why she's better. But just not very good. And then Marissa's also not very good, probably worse than Ewan, because she doesn't even have technically the long-term potential that Ewan has. Ewan can become a summoner and use staves. Marissa she starts off by not killing things, and then if you grind her all the way up, she continues to not kill things. Like, that's exactly what you want from a sword-locked, foot-locked unit. Like, I don't want... Like, Marissa is like S tier if you're like really into units that like don't do anything and die easily and like don't kill things and like don't retaliate with hand axes or whatever. Like, so really, really good if that's what you're in the market for. I used her fairly recently, actually, and like, hey, she dodges some axe bros. Shamshir is a pretty good weapon that only sword masters and myrmidons and assassins can use. Like, just give it to Joshua. Just, it's disappointing though, because like Marissa's cool, kind of. She knows Garrick, and if you know Garrick, if you're friends with Garrick, that makes you cool by association. So I guess she gets points from that. So maybe better than Ewan. Maybe worse than Amelia, actually. You know, that's the hot take. Amelia's not the worst character in the game. Marissa's the worst character in the game, because you can't associate with a guy like Garrick and be this bad. Like, that's just, like... At least Amelia's a war crime because she's a child. Like, Marissa, like, oh my god. Tethys, Dancer. S tier. Or top of A tier. It depends on how you look at dancing in this game. There's some warp strats late in the game that are really good for dancing, and then like there's some maps, some kill boss maps late in the game that you can trivialize with some dancing, so I think S tier. But she's not around for very long, actually, so it's very hard to say. But it is such a unique niche, and nobody else does what she does in the second half of the game. And so if you need to pop some extra healing with like Artur to build some staff rank, or you need to kill another dude with Seth or Garrick, or you need to like get Duessel to ice another guy, or you need like a rescue drop to be completed. Like, she facilitates all of that, whether you're playing fast or slow. If you need to double warp in a chapter in one turn, she gets you hooked up with that. Like, there's just a lot that she can do. So I think actually easy S tier upon thinking about it. Not a whole lot to say other than dancing is overpowered because it allows you to do anything that you need to do twice. And that's just really good. And then Garrick is probably right here. 0% growth, he's the best combat unit late game. Get him the Garm, he kills everything. 15 speed upon promotion is really, really good. And of course, in a growths playthrough, he's just a beast. He's gonna get even better. I remember I rated him pretty lowly in my Let's Play, because I just thought like being really good at combat and being a mercenary at base just isn't that good in Sacred Stones in a growth context, but it really still is because his stats are just that good. You can just rescue drop him into like a shitload of enemies. You can warp him into a shitload of enemies. It doesn't matter. He's going to kill everything, and he's going to be like your best unit while doing it. Like, I think just incredibly powerful. You can promote into hero. His promotion is actually kind of hard to figure if you're doing a growth playthrough, because Ranger and Hero both have their drawbacks. Ranger gets a mount, but it gets bows. And Hero doesn't get a mount, but it gets axes. I think getting the axes and then getting Garm is way better than anything a 6-move mount can do. For someone whose like main like goal is going to be combat, because you want Garrick fighting people. Like, you don't want him like doing like silly utility shit. He needs to be killing motherfuckers, and that's what he does best. So really, really powerful. Love this guy. What a beast. Marissa, take some fucking notes. Marissa, like, why don't you just fucking promote into hero or something? Then you'd be, like, salvageable. The fact that, like, Swordmaster and Assassin is her promotion options. What a fucking joke. Then you got Renak, who's, like, probably around there. Renak is a thief, or he's an assassin, but he does thiefy shit, and there isn't a whole lot of thiefy shit to do, but he has good base stats, so when there are a couple things you do want to steal, he can do that, which isn't often. He can pick chests and doors without a lockpick. That's pretty nice, if you're into that sort of thing. But again, chest keys are buyable. The unlock staff is a thing. Lockpicks aren't really a big problem. And door keys always, of course, drop from enemies nearby, so, like, but his combat's okay. I know there's, like, there's some shit you want to steal in, like, the swamp map where you get Cyrene, and he can do that because it's a giant axe bro that has that item. I forget what it is, a stat booster. I think it's a speed wing or energy ring, something like that, and he can steal it. That's pretty good. He's worse than Gilliam, actually, though. He's better than La Rochelle, but he's worse than Gilliam. He's also just a pain in the ass to recruit on Ephraim route. Not holding that against him, but, like, seriously, dude, like, calm the fuck down. Last time I played that map, actually, I just, like, sacrificed La Rochelle to the Berserk staff to get him, and it was like, who cares? Buy D stabs, don't need you. Renak's alright. Now, who's also alright is Noel, because Noel is, like, insta-promotes into Summoner and has 0 luck, which is hilarious. A lot of people don't like him because he's a bad combat unit, which he is, but, like, you have enough good combat units to where, like, you don't really need a new one. And he gets, like, E or D staffs on promotion. I think it's just E, but, like, again, you have a lot of really good staff users, so just having the extra healing lying around is nice enough. The draw with Noel, he summons, and summoning phantoms is completely broken for the entire second half of the game. Because summons are going to be prioritized by enemies all the time because they can both kill and maximize damage against them. So they're completely broken. So you can use Noel's very unique utility to bait out siege tomes, like the Shadow Shot Gorgons, or the Purge tomes that you have to deal with late in that game. Fog of War maps, you can send them out into the Fog of War as scouts, and you don't have to worry about it. Like, if you're like got an area that you haven't been able to torch or something, like, there's just a lot you can do. They're also flyers, so you can, like, have them draw enemies over mountaintops and stuff. Like, so very, very interesting, very broken tool that you can play with. And Noel pretty much has that by himself. Ewan can go Summoner, but it takes him, like, ass forever. By the time Noel joins and pops a Master Seal or a Guiding Ring, like, it's over. It's done. Like, he's going to be good the rest of the game, and Ewan's just never going to get to that point. So really, really good. And then you got Sele. Remember, this dude was low tier back in the day, because I don't know how people were like, look, dog, 16 base magic, A, anima, C, stabs, B, light, that's bad. Don't use him. Use Ewan instead. Ewan's way better. Ewan comes with an energy ring. Well, you take that energy ring off of Ewan and you give it to Sele, and then you've got 9 base warp range, and now we're really talking. I mean, of course, getting Sele to A is a little difficult, but you can spam barrier, and that works. We're, of course, rating him off of Eirika route, so probably right there, I'd say. Is he better or worse than Tana? Yeah, I'd say he's a little better, because that's debatable. I don't know. I really don't know here. Comment section, help out. Sele versus Eirika route, Sele versus Tana. Who's better? Who the fuck knows? But he kills a lot of things. Very, very good in growth playthroughs and 0% growths. His base stats are absolutely ridiculous. You can get him up to A stabs very easily, and he's going to have your best warp range more than likely, because he's going to have better magic than Moulder or Natasha do, certainly. Artur's not going to be... Artur could be close to A stabs, actually, but he's still going to have worse magic more than likely than Sele. And then Sele, of course, has got the anima. He's probably going to get S anima, kill dudes that way. Like, what a god. It just impresses me every time, like, I use Sele, like, to be like, this was allowed? Like, why was this allowed? I don't understand. Like, oh my god, so good. And then you got Ines. The only thing worse than, like, sword locked is bow locked, But at least compared to Neimi, he kills things. You can use a silver bow at base. Gets up to S bows really easily. If you want a... What's it called? The Niglogged? If you want to use that bow, like... NS is your dude. It sucks that he's sniper, though, and not a ranger. If he were a ranger, he would be significantly better. Because higher movement, canto, all that. But as it is, NS... very similar to Joshua. If you need a guy that's just like a player phase nuke, he's going to do it for you. But he's just not going to do a ton. Now, there are instances on Eirika route specifically where you can put him next to some walls, and he really goes to town. And that's pretty fun. But you can put somebody with a hand axe or a javelin next to a wall and get the same results. So, like, it isn't really like a big point in his favor. It's just something that he can do that gives him something to do on enemy phase. But overall, being a player phase nuke in this game is, like, better than being a player phase do nothing in the game. But, like, you want an enemy phase desperately. He comes with the white gem, though. That's pretty good. That's really powerful. Like, that helps your money. Bad otherwise, though. And then we got Mur. Mur is a 6-move flyer who's, like, thankfully, like, kind of a lolly, but, like, not designed like one. So, like, thank you, she's not Noe. And that's pretty good. And then her stats are bad, but her defense and resistance are really high. The problem, though, is her HP is just ass cheeks, so she's not as durable as you would expect her to be. But she's fine. I mean, she's not that fine. Like, she's kind of really bad, actually. I think, like, the issue you're going to have if you try to use Mur is that she's locked to one range and she's very frail. Being a flyer is nice, but she just doesn't bring a whole lot to the table that you really, really like. I mean, honestly, she's probably closer to here, maybe around, like, Orson, because Orson at least nukes all of 5x, and Mur never really gets a chance to do that. A lot of people don't like Mur because she's only limited to 50 attacks in the game. That doesn't really matter. You're not going to use her 50 times. It sucks that you can't bring her to Creature Campaign, but Creature Campaign's also boring, so, like, the fuck, who cares? Yeah, like, not a whole lot to say, really, about her, except that she's made frail by just a terrible, I think it's like 16 base HP, and that just is not going to get it done. Because late game Sacred Stones enemies do hit hard enough to pierce her defense. They don't hit hard enough for, like, Duessel or Garrick or Seth to care, but they do hit hard enough for someone with 16 HP to care. So, really not durable enough, but hey, she's fun. She is fun to use, I will give her that. It's fun to have a little girl turn into a giant dragon and, like, melt people with her breath. That's pretty cool. But, like, otherwise, Alright, last character, Cyrene. Cyrene kills eggs very quickly when you gotta fight the eggs. D tier. Eggs are, like, easy enemies. The only thing she can fight is something that can't fight back. The issue with Cyrene that I always find is that her HP is so bad and her damage output is so bad, even with, like, the Silver Lance or, like, Silver Sword. I think she has Sea Swords, actually. She's not using the Silver Sword, but, like, Silver Lance, she's just not doing enough. She'll double, fine, but then she gets absolutely destroyed on the counterattack. On enemy phase, she gets eaten alive. Just does not have the durability. It sucks she can't go Wyvern Lord or Wyvern Knight. Like, that's kind of buns, but I mean, late game flyer, you kind of get what you pay for a little bit, which is nothing. So I guess she has that going for her, but she arrives really late without just a whole lot to do. But eggs, if you want to give her levels, I gave her levels last time I played. She was still bad, but eggs, kill the eggs, eat the eggs. It's easy. Eggs. That's Cyrene. Egg killer. It's really incredible skill. Good utility. Rescue drop some people, I guess. I like her design. Like, I guess. So, like, waifu tier. Maybe. No. Better than Mur, though. And Ross. Looking at this, we're pretty much done to wrap it up here. Looking at this really quickly, because I like symmetry and stuff, and starting to look at how these tiers have kind of worked out. I'm thinking I'm probably going to go Seele over Tana and move Kyle down to B tier to the very top of it. And then I'm probably just going to move Larachelle down to F tier, because really, unless you bring her for Renak, she never does anything. Renak can at least like survive combat and like do thiefy things if you want him to. I'm pretty satisfied, actually, I think, with this tier list right here. So tell me what you think, and I will see you all for the next video, whenever that may be. Bye.